Welcome to my first ever questions and answers Q&A on my channel. I recently had a poll on my YouTube channel in the community tab where I asked for your questions and I want to answer all of them, or at least as many as I can get in this video. And if you liked this video, please let me know in the comments and leave a like, because then I can maybe make another one of these episodes very soon. As always, thanks to all my supporters on YouTube, Twitch and Patreon. And now, without much further ado, let's already jump in the first question. So we have here a question by Chicken and Duck Broth. If you could only play one profession for the rest of your life, which one would it be? Also, don't you ever get bored of playing Guild Wars 2 since you basically have everything already? So that are already two questions. I will start with the first one. If you could only play one profession for the rest of your life, which one would it be? That would be, in my case, it would be Mesmer. I think Mesmer is very unique. It doesn't have a lot of other games that have Mesmer. So I personally think Mesmer is very unique in that way, and I really enjoy the playstyle of Mesmer. It's very flexible, you have crazy good elite specs, Chronomancer is really fun, Virtuoso is really fun, and Mirage is also very fun, very unique, very flexible. But I personally, if I could only play one profession for the rest of my life, it's very likely that I would actually not play Guild Wars 2 anymore. Variety is the spice of life, and that's the most true in Guild Wars 2, I would say, because I play every single class, every single elite spec, I like all of them, and I just mix and match whenever I have fun and play everything. So I would probably quit the game if I had to make this decision. But if I had to choose one profession, like your question here is, it would be Mesmer. Also, don't you ever get bored of playing Guild Wars 2, since you basically have everything? So I personally would say yes, at some point you get bored, but that's the cool part. What I already mentioned in the first part of the question is I just swap to another class, for example, maybe swap to another game mode. It's always like I switch and whatever I feel like currently is the best thing for me to do. But of course, you're right. At some point, if I played the game for 3 or 4 hours a day, 7 days a week, then yes, I will actually get bored and I just stop playing Guild Wars 2, play something else, maybe work on another video. It's more like I play Guild Wars 2 to have fun, but I don't force myself to do anything. That's the most important part. If I don't have fun right now, I don't play Guild Wars 2. That means that if maybe it's 1 day, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month. That was the case for me ever since I started playing Guild Wars 2. I quit and came back whenever I felt like it was necessary. So yes, you're right, I have a lot in the game and I currently don't have a crazy goal, but personally I think I still have fun, and my biggest fun currently is just to create content for you in Guild Wars 2. Let's get to the next question. The next question is by Gail Brook. The differences in build crafting when you are making a build with exotic gear versus making a build with ascended legendary. As one example, identifying the stats you need for your build goals and determining what level of stat is enough. Since most build builders are using ascended legendary gear, having the right plan for getting a stat level to your target if you have to build with exotic. For example, how to shift from ascended to exotic when a build wants crit chance to result at 100%, or you are pushing for concentration boon duration or expertise condition duration. So to answer this part of the question is, I personally think that it's very important that you know what kind of role you want to fill. I talked here, typically I will now talk about PvE and not the other game modes because there it's a little bit harder, but let's talk about PvE. So in PvE, the biggest things are for power builds, reach 100% crit rate. If you are on exotic, you might have to swap to more assassin pieces or go for full berserk instead of some dragon pieces in there, something like that. Crit chance is the most important part, so get crit chance to 100% always. Then concentration, like you already mentioned, is not as important to reach 100%. So if you are offensive support, you should be able to permanently upkeep your offensive boon like quickness or alacrity. That is typically not done by getting to 100%. So you just need to reach the number high enough in the concentration to actually get full 100% uptime of the boon. This is sometimes very easy by going full berserker, for example, but sometimes you have to go with some diviner pieces. That's just how it is. And if you want to get a build, then just copy the build that I made, for example, with ascended gear and reach the same number of boon duration that I have with my ascended gear with your exotic gear, and that means that you have, for example, to go for more diviners pieces because you get less concentration on your gear. So get the same number. That's the important part. Not how you achieve it, get the same number. And then expertise and condition duration is exactly the same. You want to reach the same number in the expertise, especially when it comes to the specific conditions. So if you are bleeding build only, you want to get bleeding to 100% typically in a Conde DPS build. If you have multiple conditions, bleeding, burning, torment and whatever, then you want to get expertise at the highest that you can get, not only bleeding. But that's, again, you should reach the same number as the ascended gear, or at least a very close number to that, to get the most amount of damage. But there it's not as problematic to not reach that number as in a concentration or boon duration build, because you always should set your role as the highest priority. So if you're quickness DPS, you should get 100% quickness out, and your DPS comes after that. Not say, okay, I want to get the full maximum damage and go for full expertise and have the same expertise number, but my boon duration is lower and therefore my uptime is lower in the quickness. That would be horrible. So keep that in mind. Now to the second part of the question, find out where performance problems lie. Is it your skill with the class build? Is your build correct? Is it the content or people you are playing with? So that's very important, that you understand that if you have the correct build, that's only, depending on the game mode, only a small fraction of the actual how good or how well that build plays. So it's always the player behind the build that is the one that actually makes the build work. So if you have the perfect build, even with full Ascended gear and everything, even in fusions, doesn't mean you reach the highest benchmark. You will always have to actually adjust your rotation to the situation. You can't, and even if you can get the perfect rotation down, that means that you have to know the perfect rotation, actually know the muscle memory to actually make it work. So perfect, I would say it's very important to always understand, yes, train your build on a golem and try to get highest DPS there. And if you then reach this, let's say 80 to 90%, then you can go and say, okay, I actually get the build now and can play it. And then you can easily play it as well in, for example, fractals and strike missions and raids even. So that's the thing. Yes, if you get the number to 80-90%, then I would say then you actually know what you're doing. Then you actually understand the build, and then it's probably the people that you're playing with if you don't have perfect boon uptime. But if the boon uptime is very good and no one is dying to mechanics, and you still don't get the perfect damage or decent damage number on the boss, then it's probably you. Then it's probably the knowledge about the fight that you do something wrong, that you are mispositioning or whatever, then it's you. But typically, if you have very good DPS on the golem, you have a decent group, then you should get decent damage numbers in the fight as well. I hope that answers this question. And now to the last question of you. How do you know when it's time to change your build? I think that's twofold. So I would say the first part is if you don't have fun with the build, you should swap. That's the most important answer to this question. The second part is if you just can't get it right. So if you're sitting for hours on the golem, or if you play the build and really get to understand how it works and you just can't get the boons up, then I maybe watch a guide, maybe watch someone that plays this build on a stream or something. But if you just can't get it right with after hours of practicing, then I would switch the build as well. That's my answer to that question. We have a follow-up question here by Simon. Simon wants a guide on how to theory craft your own builds. Relics and runes and sigils make so much difference. For example, if I'm world versus world, how much toughness, power and health do I need to aim for to be able to survive? And that's what I already mentioned. If you play world versus world, for example, it's actually quite hard to give you some kind of stat line, because there it's way more about how you actually make your build work. So that's the theory crafting behind your own build, is always like what kind of niche, what kind of role you want to fill, especially in competitive modes, and how you can fill this niche the best. So for example, if you go for a tanky version and you have a lot of toughness in your build, then typically I would say the highest toughness that you can get is quite nice without sacrificing too much of your damage. So I can't give you a clear number for that, because it's more like if you're comfortable without having any toughness and you fight builds very easily because you have a lot of protection, which gives you minus 33% damage reduction, then you don't need any toughness. But if you don't have high protection uptime in a world versus world build, for example, you want to maybe go for some toughness in the kit. The same goes, of course, for health. Health, in my opinion, is even worse to actually judge, because health is like you get more vitality, which is nice, you can take more damage, but the damage you take is still quite high. It's just the health pool that you have, let's say, blocks a bit of that. So if you have 20k HP and you get hit by an attack that takes 10k away, you can get 2 shots. But if you have, for example, 30k HP, you will need 3 hits of this attack to actually die. If you have some toughness in there, you might actually decrease this amount of attacks to only, let's say, 2.5 without actually increasing your HP pool. Why would you do that, you might ask? Yeah, because the healing is actually quite important. So healing should be considered. So if you heal for 10k and you have only 20k HP, it's for half your life. But if you have 30k HP, you actually only heal for a third. And you can't increase that healing without going into healing power as well. So you should always consider how much health do I really need, because vitality only protects you from damage a bit, but most importantly protects you from condition damage. Always min-max toughness, healing power and vitality to actually suit your needs. And with power it's the same. Go for the highest power stat possible without sacrificing too much defense. And when it comes to runes, it's just use the rune that is actually giving you the most stats that you actually need. It's quite easy nowadays. For example, if you need power, you should go for nice power build runes. If you want to go for more movement speed, go for movement speed rune. If you want to go for celestial stats, go for the celestial rune. I think that's quite straightforward. For sigils, it's actually crazy going which kind of sigils you want to go for. Typically, I would say going for defensive sigils is a safe bet, but sometimes you want to increase your damage by going for more aggressive sigil, like on a Condi build, Geomancy and Doom, or a power build, you would go for Force even, or some kind of air sigil. Relics is way harder. Relics is always like go for the one that actually suits your builds and your playstyle, but I can't say you always go for fireworks because that's only working a small fraction of the build. So the relics make such a big difference. That's so correct, and it completely changes how the build is played. So what I want to mention here is try different stuff and have fun with it. You will get to know and learn all that stuff. That's the most important part. Then we have some more personal questions by OKDC. I like my steak medium rare. How about you? I typically like my steak in well done, but I have to be honest, I don't eat that much steak. Then let's stay with food. By Sigmo, soft or hard tacos? I would say I like soft tacos the most. Just some quick fire answers to these questions. By Exarchon, what's your profession IRL? So my profession IRL would be some kind of biomedical researcher. Can't go into more detail here, but that's the shortest answer to that. Then we have a question again regarding the game. Dark Lorty, do you enjoy the gold making market focus of Guild Wars 2? I personally enjoyed it a lot. So if you don't know, I started my content creations journey, I would say roughly 10 months ago. And before that, I was still playing, of course, a lot of Guild Wars 2, even more than now, I would say. And I was actually doing a lot of gold making and a lot of, so to say, trading posts and just processing, making a lot of gold with that. And that's why I actually have so much stuff already unlocked on my account. So actually I enjoy it a lot, but nowadays I don't engage with that too much anymore because I focus more on content creation. Hope that answers your question. Then we have a question here by Sorfen. Besides open world builds, I would also really like to see a guide on what spec can best farm storylines. I think mobility and AoE clearing should be two main concerns of the build because of all of the instances, but perhaps there's more. So I would say story instances are typically, I would say, best played by just playing a raiding build or something like that, a typical meta build, because they are very easy. So if you play a very DPS, especially power-up DPS build, you actually kill all of the stuff very fast. And if you then slot in some movement skills like a blink or something like that, like teleport skills, or even just some faster skills like swiftness or something like that, dash skills, that helps a lot. And just having a meta build for a build that also applies some AoE pressure and stuff would be good, like you already mentioned. But personally, I think the farming storylines is not that really productive or not really that crazy in terms of gold farms. If you really want to get farm stuff, if you just want to get through the story fast, I would go like I just said. But if you want to farm the story, for example, for Black Lion keys, you would go for the level 10 story, want to just get the Black Lion key there. And to do that, you would probably just min-max and use, for example, a warrior or whatever is currently the best character to actually farm this, and just get this level to level 10, get the story done by using very fast skills like the Greatsword and just one-shotting bosses with having top gear for the level and actually completing it very fast. And that's my tip here. I would not typically use open world builds. I think it works in story instances, of course, but it's not necessary. They are not that hard to actually really have solo and open world builds being better there. Typically having for example, quickness DPS is probably the fastest because you can actually spam your attacks and it just burst the boss, so to say, down. Then we have a question by Primate Arms. What might the common cause be for a build not performing as well as expected? Or what are likely to be making the biggest differences between expectation and reality? I don't have ascended gear or the best relics or sigils, so I expect that to make a difference, but nothing so huge. Not having the best sigils and relics, of course, give you damage loss. Depending on what kind of sigil, it can be up to 5 to 10% with the relics and sigil. The ascended gear again would be roughly around 10%, I don't know. Depends a bit how much you have, if you don't have any. I have used a number of different builds that are performing terribly against the target dummy 5k, or which are supposed to be super tanky, like a solo PvE Vindicator that have struggled with even against EOD hero challenges. Honestly, I don't think I've found a game yet that I struggled with more than Guild Wars 2. I'm limited to playing with a controller, so that doesn't help. Yeah, that's true. Guild Wars 2 is not optimized for controllers, so I would personally say that's probably the biggest problem. You have to press your attacks fast in Guild Wars 2, and you have to press all of them if it's necessary, and a controller doesn't really let you do that easily. So I think that's the biggest problem. But other than that, I would say even if you have the perfect build, that's the most true in PvP. in World vs. World, but mostly it's also true in PvE. If you have the perfect build, yeah, so you would have full ascended gear, everything perfectly, even in fusions, there is always some kind of, let's say, 80 to 60% of the build is actually not the build itself, but it's the player that actually performs on it. We had that in a previous question, but I think if you know the rotation perfectly, you get to the damage number. If you don't know anything about the rotation, even me, I would probably only reach maximum 50% of the damage with having the perfect gear. So it's really important to understand how it works and not only understand the rotation and copy your build, but also to adjust to the situation. So if you have some heavy damage coming in, also use your healing skill, for example, but also learn how to dodge, when to actually use your attacks, how much aftercast they have, something like that. That helps a lot. But I think if you're a new player, I would always say stick to the build that you have fun with and try to actually get the rotation down, get better gear for it, and then go into harder content and you will actually master the build in no time. Just stick to it, learn how to play it and have fun, and it's actually always try to improve and you will actually reach that number in the end. Don't worry, this will actually happen. I hope that can help you there a bit. Then we have a question by my guy Silvio at Gaming. Shoutouts to him. If you had the opportunity to ask the dev studio director about anything they had to answer, what would you ask them? That question is actually, I like that one. I like that because I think I had a very clear answer to that, or really clear question to that. I would ask them what their future plans are, how their schedule, how their plans to their development is actually looking like. I don't want to see the next month, I want to actually see the next 5 years. How much they actually already have planned out, what they have actually are they currently working on, and that kind of stuff. So I would ask them, how is your schedule looking for the next 5 years? What is actually going on? And I would ask, of course, to someone that actually knows about that stuff, not a dev that is only working on UI. I want to ask someone that actually knows what is actually currently going on, so the CEO or something. That would be my question there. And I would, not only as a content creator, but as just someone, as a player that is curious what actually is going on in the dev team and in the development of Guild Wars 2 and maybe even Guild Wars 3. That would be my biggest question. What they are planning, how they want to actually continue with Guild Wars 2 and just their projects that are going on. What is their plan? How does that affect me as a player? I want to know that. But that's a really cool question. So let me know in the comments if you actually have other answers or other questions to that question, if you understand what I mean. I'm really interested to see what you have there. Last question here for today. I did not answer all the questions, so I will answer the rest in the next episode. If you have more questions, by the way, let me know in the comments as well. And now let's go to the last question by Jenna. What do you play and enjoy the most when not streaming or making a video content? So what is the relaxing off-hours class and content you play? Any other games than Guild Wars 2? I think being a content creator changes things. It did for me. Different type of content though. So it goes a bit like if one's a chef in a restaurant would imagine that at home after a long day of cooking just warms up a pizza from yesterday. Yeah, that sounds interesting. Can't tell you about that one, but in Guild Wars 2 I would say I often play Guild Wars 2 only when I don't stream, when I don't create content. Typically I play Guild Wars 2 only for 1 hour maximum per day because I don't have that much time other than that. And if I want to play anything on the PC, when I don't have the energy or the time to play Guild Wars 2, I just typically play roguelikes. So there are games that are also having heavily build crafting influences in there, like Guild Wars 2, what I enjoy the most about Guild Wars 2, playing different builds, but are not having the progression element that MMOs have. So typically in MMO, you have to invest hundreds of hours to actually get to the highest number that you can, highest gear and whatever, and get the knowledge to actually craft your own builds, I would say. So I really want to have that and just jump in, play for half an hour, have some fun, try some new builds, and then just stop playing and come back maybe a week later. That's something that I can get most of the time in roguelikes. So that's what I play off stream and just have fun with that. But I personally play other games as well. I even play other MMOs. It's just currently I do a lot of content creation, and most of the time that I play Guild Wars 2, I either stream it or I create content out of the gameplay that I have. So I hope that answers your question there. And the bonus question, do you think they will nerf Specter Scepter skill 2? It's so crazy good now with Carcosa Relic. I'm getting used to it and it feels sad preemptively already, and Fear Init will just adjust in the next Banished update. Now that finally Giga Fun to take Specter to World vs. World, all those barriers and healing. I think they knew that it will be absolutely broken, because otherwise they would not have adjusted it. and I personally think they will not nerf it. I think Specter is in a very healthy spot in most game modes, especially because of the Scepter 2 skill, and I think they will not nerf it, even though it's absolutely broken in just the how much Caracosa spam you can get out. So maybe they will nerf the Caracosa relic in a way that will say, okay, it will have an ICD or something, maybe, but I really doubt that they will just remove the Specter blast on the skill 2. I think that will not happen. And with that, we conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more questions and answers episodes like this. Let me know more questions in the comments. And if your question did not get answered yet, don't worry, we will answer it in the next episode. Thanks to my supporters on YouTube, Twitch, and Patreon. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you all in the next video.